Okay, today on the workbench we've got the machine robot. This was made by Horikawa in Japan back in around 1963 thereabouts. It's a all-tin battery operated robot that walks with swinging arms and flashing lights and spinning lights in the head and little poles up the top of the shoulder. It's a pretty cool robot, but it's a very hard robot to repair. So this one was sent to me in parts, in pieces, bagged individually. In other words, someone else took it apart, hoping they'd be able to repair it, and in the end, sent me the bits and pieces. Now, I have done videos on the machine robot before. I'll put a link down in the description below if you want to watch one of the other ones where I show a demonstration of one and what the box looked like, and talk about the common problems. But the most common problem with the machine robot is with this switch. We call this the butterfly switch. And in the end, there'll be a plastic front on here and everything. But these always get broken. They weren't durable, they don't age well, and they're very, very difficult to replace. Now, when this was sent to me, this piece was not attached to this motor frame. It was hanging loose, with the wires hanging loose. This is the top of the battery box. I just have jammed up there. Someone felt necessary to take that apart too. I don't know why. We'll start with what's left of the old butterfly switch. Basically someone had repaired this toy a minimum of one time before because they had tried epoxying all the bits and pieces of the butterfly switch back together. Now, I needed that bit of the old switch because it had this little piece of metal. See that little hunk of copper there? Maybe you can see it from this side. We're talking about way up in there. I'm going to move it. You see the piece that's moving? I needed that piece of contact because it is riveted on with like a brass eyelet. In fact, where that wire is coming up through the center of the part we're talking about, that's the eyelet. And it comes through the bottom, which I can't show you now, and solders to a tab on that piece. In order to put that piece on, it all rests on this post. And originally the top of the post is crimped and it holds it all together. In order to put the new switch on, you've got to grind the top of that crimp off. In this case, I normally put a small washer and then solder on the top to hold the washer in place because the crimp is gone. There's no other way to put the new plastic piece on. It wasn't meant to be repaired. So I did that part not on camera for two reasons. One, because that took more than 30 minutes just to assemble and get the switch on there and file and grind and all that. And that too many of you are going to watch a 30-minute video on just the switch repair. But two, I don't have a camera person, so that you wouldn't have seen any of it anyway. Most of it would have taken place with this thing sitting in my lap with a file and a soldering gun and other tools, and very little of it would have taken place where the camera could have seen it. But I thought you might like to see the insides while we have this thing apart. Now, back in here, there, and you might be able to see some of it from this side. That's the flasher unit for these two lights. This machine robot's also called directional robot by a lot of, or turn signal robot by a lot of collectors, because there's two lights, a red and a green light, and they alternately flash back and forth while all these gears are spinning. And so that's the mechanical sequencer that does the flashing for the lights. And of course you can see the motor up here top. I briefly ran it. I haven't put more than 2 or 3 seconds of runtime on it just to see if it would run. But I did put some oil on the ends of the shafts. And there is a little hole. There you can see it. So before I had the front and everything on, I did squirt some contact cleaner in there so if the brushes needed it, they would get some lubrication. I think we need to try to start assembling this thing. So we've got this back piece, and you can see here's the top of the battery connector is going to go. We'll do that last. There are 2 slots here for these 2 tabs right here. The lower two tabs, they just bent in and they never even cut the tab hole in the battery box for whatever reason. So we'll have to make sure the gearbox tabs fit in there. And then it looks like everything else that holds us on is going to be from these side tabs going into these slots on this main faceplate. And if you're wondering what holds the main faceplate onto the gearbox, there's a tab right there. And down on the bottom, down in there is one, and the same on this side. And that kind of holds this whole menagerie onto it. And unfortunately, whoever took it apart also bent these apart enough that there were bends in the metal. And once you bent metal, it's bent. There's no real way to unbend metal. All you can do is bend it some more. But try to straighten that out as much as possible. Let's see what we can do here. Again, no camera person, so I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to do in front of the camera and how much I just kind of need to put down on my lap and do. Problem comes in that, I guess before I go any further, I'll show you. See these pins on the tops of the leg mechanisms? And then the arms that swing, see there's a slot for those pins to go in. So not only am I trying to line up 6 metal tabs, but I also need to line up these arm linkage bits all at the same time. Probably wasn't a very fun toy to assemble in the factory, would be my guess. Getting the battery box piece out of the way. Okay, I've got that side in. I've got the pin in the tab. Now let's try to do the same for this side. And at the same time trying to make sure those 2 gearbox tabs we talked about before actually end up going into the battery box. And I got to make sure these little poles, these posts, are out of the way. Yeah, it is kind of a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, it's not horrible if you weren't trying to do it and hold it where the camera can kind of see something. But it's horrible when you are trying to do that. Alright. I'm not 100% sure whether this little tab on the body should be on the inside or on the outside. I'm thinking on the inside. So I've got the arms in their posts. Yes, yes. Both those. I've got the gearbox tabs sticking through here. We won't do anything with those just yet. And I've got the front in place. So let's, we don't want to bend any of the front tabs until we were sure everything is looking promising, because, like I say, we know this has been opened a minimum of once before and probably more. And these little tabs, once they break, then you're kind of screwed. Yes, sometimes we can spot weld new ones on, and soldering can be done, but it generally, even though if you're soldering on the inside, it generates enough heat that it screws up the paint job on the outside. Okay, it shouldn't be able to fall apart at this point. Before I bend those motor tabs, I'm going to try to put this top to the battery box back in place. Make sure that's all lining up right. So far so good. And these tabs bend outward. Yes, the hard part is the switch. Okay. So far so good. I think we're safe to bend these gearbox tabs inside the battery box. The only thick metal in the toy is the gearbox, so of course they take the most effort to bend back in place. There we go. So we got the tabs back, got the top of the gearbox in. I think at this point we should find out whether it runs. And I haven't done any cleaning on the battery contacts, but we'll just see how things go. Batteries are a bit oversized. Modern batteries don't really want to fit in there right. See how they kind of don't really nest. Dollar store cheap carbon battery type things would probably be better. Okay, what have we got? Very good. Now you'll notice up here on top we got a spinning thing. This little spinning bent post. That's because the head has got a bent post also, and those two bent posts will eventually engage. And this, when this turns, spins a color wheel up in the head. There's a single light bulb up in there, and it'll make the colors change up in the top of the head. Now these two weird metal posts, they come up through these shoulder holes when you go to reassemble all of this, and these have to be soldered on, and you need to make sure checked with a continuity checker. In this case the red one is frame ground. It's kind of redundant. Most of the toys didn't bother to do the frame ground, they just hoped that the connection be made from all the bent metal parts. But this one has a separate one, so we'll solder that on, and then this one is going to go to the main B+. In this particular case, the switch switches the battery to frame ground, so that's how it turns on and off. But before we do any of that, we've got the clear plastic front piece, and you need to put that part on now because that shoulder top, so you can see how that nests down in there. There were grooves in the sides and then grooves on this piece, like so. So you're going to have to solder these wires, and they're not very long, so I'm not 100% sure how well that's going to go. Got a feeling that these shoulder things there's not a lot of extra room there. I'm going to get a couple clothespins to kind of keep some of this together while I'm doing this, so it can't slide off those two rods, because this kind of needs to be leaning forward, and I'm going to need to get in here to solder. And okay, I can see on the top of this frame right here some shiny solder right there. So that's why I've got to get this red wire. And then the blue wire has got to come over here to this contact. And I'm telling you that because there isn't any way we're going to keep this in camera while I'm doing this. I've got the soldering gun here heating up. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, we're good there. Let's see if we can flow some solder onto that piece of metal first. Get it warm. There we go. Let's get the red wire down in there. Like I say, the red wire in this case is redundant, and it could be someone's added that. I've done that in the past too, because so many of these toys through the years, once you get a little bit of, you know, you have paint buildup to begin with, but you get a little oxidation on the metal, and all of a sudden things don't work the way they did when they were new. And sometimes just adding ground wires can really help. Okay. Oh, and yes, I did use a battery pack to check these bulbs. I don't really like the way that wire's taking solder. Check the bulbs before we started assembling anything, because if any of the bulbs had been burned out, then it kind of, you know, means you're going to have to take everything apart. Okay. So there you can see I've put in the two wires, and you can see the two cranks. See that crank there and the one up in the head? You don't have to do any alignment there. It's going to be self-aligning. The way they're bent and shaped, they will just line themselves up. On the back, we've got a lot of tabs we have to line up here all at once. You start with these back ones on this particular design, and then there's two on the sides as well. And these, I didn't check them to see if they were bent, so if I can't get it together, then it's going to be because they're a little bent, but we'll see. We'll see how things go. Again, I don't think I can do this and keep it in camera. I need my little flat blade screwdriver. Can't see it. Maybe I can do it with an X-Acto knife. I'm trying to get this notch opened up again. It's right where they bent the body and whoever took it apart. I gotta get that. There we go. That made a big difference. The side one started on that side. The side one started on this side. That's a gooch. There we go. Now, they did send me, stuck on a little piece of tape, two of the little C pieces that I got to put over these tabs before you bend them, and that's what basically is going to hold the head down in place, its shoulder I should say. And before I bend them all the way, I'll bend them a little just so that piece doesn't fall off, and we'll check things again. Oh dear. I should have checked that. Well, I may have to take it apart. See there? I've got the tab on the upper neck pieces there, but notice there is no tab for the lower one. So actually, depending on the condition of this upper tab, I might be able to bend it down around and tuck it into the hole and hold everything together. On the other hand, depending on how many times it's been apart, that tab might break off. But right now, with the other tab missing, this is the only option without making a tab in metal and trying to spot weld it in there and all that. So I'm trying to bend this tab around. So far it feels good. It does feel strong. You can generally feel it when they've gone weak from being bent too many times. There we go. Tucked it around and bent it back into the hole. Now these other ones, we still have to bend them, but you wait and power things up and make sure everything is working right before going to that step. Okay, so let's try it one more time. So now you can see that color wheel up on top. It's real bright in here, so I'm surprised you can, if you see it at all. Hey, we're working. Actually working quite well considering the age. And you can see how these rods on top move back and forth. Now normally there's two plastic balls that get pushed down on here, and they were, you know, to keep kids from poking their eyes out, I guess. But he didn't have those parts. And what I'm looking for now, here we go. Got this little mini pointy thing. And if this doesn't work, Allen wrenches work too. But we had these tabs that we slid in right there, and then they provide a hole where you put something pointy in. A drill bit could work, a little Allen wrench could work. You get in there and that allows you to bend that tab to lock everything together. And that's how a lot of these toys are put together, where you don't see the tabs. They'll have these holes where they run the tabs in, and then, see, actually, you might be able to see this one. The tab is actually blocking the hole, so we get in there and push on it, and then bend it up so it's bent at a right angle. And that will lock everybody together. So there you have it. Had an inside look at the Machine Man robot from 1963, Horikawa, Japan. You've seen it operate, and you've seen how to put one back together.